Hey everyone, welcome to the new FakeWhale live episode. And today I have the pleasure and the honor to interview one of my most favorite artists. How are you, brother?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much, man.
It's
Great
great,
intro. I love it. The new fake whale.
Yeah, I was trying to be professional.
You nailed it. You're gonna take
Thanks,
my
bro.
job.
Yeah, I'm trying. So, brother, I want to really start this one with, I want you to tell a bit about yourself because you have been such an influent artist, in the past 10 years. So I really would love you to touch a bit on your pre-NFT experience, as an artist, about your career. So can you please, tell us a bit about your story?
Sure. I guess you and I have kind of touched on this before, but the story of my career really starts, I think, on Tumblr around 2008, 2009, like the early days of Tumblr, and forming a following through using social media to build like a network of people that follow your work. And all this time I was still working regular jobs and stuff like that. So my career overall has been like a real slow burn, slow build. It's still being built. um, but that really was the impetus of it all, I would say. That's when I started to see how I can use that technology and just like use that system of social networking to build a career online, where more people can see your work than are able to in real life, as I was living at the time in the Midwest. Uh, uh, the first big milestone that I remember would be like around 2011 when I had my first illustration published in the New York Times. It had always been a goal of mine to have my work published. At the time, I felt like that was really like the way to do it, like that you made it, or something, or the like a big step if you have your work published. So being published in the New York Times with an illustration was a big deal. Like I remember they emailed me asking if I was available to do an illustration. And I was so young and green at the time that I wrote back saying like, is this for real? Like, I didn't believe it. I was just like, I have no idea how somebody like the New York Times would find me, at this point. So that was huge for me. But also that year, then I was published in a book called Cutting Edges, which was a book published by Gestalten, like a really nice hardcover book. And that was the first like comprehensive book on like an emerging collage aesthetic that was coming out at the time. And that was a big deal because that came along with like gallery shows in Berlin and stuff like that. So that was really like the lead into like a more professional career. In 2014, then I had a commission from Prince, which was a really big deal as well. I've had a lot of commissions over the years, but this one was the one that was kind of like a real ignition for me, that allowed me to further my career, because at that point I was able to quit my job as a server. It took me, like over like a decade of serving in restaurants, before I was able to do that and focus on art. At that point, I took the leap, moved to LA around 2015. At that time, I was working a lot in fashion, a lot of editorials and campaigns and stuff like that. And then in 2016, landed my first major campaign, which was for McHugh, which is the streetwear ready-to-wear label by Alexander McQueen. And it was actually their very first campaign ever. Um, so that was a big deal, and it meant a lot to me to do that, especially being a huge fan of Alexander McQueen. And then also 2016 was my first solo in New York City. So that was a huge milestone as well. That was actually my first like proper solo show ever. Um, 2017, I had another solo show, I think. Shortly after all that is when I released my book Misophonia, and that was in 2018. That was 200-page art book, all my work, um, and that was released on Sacred Bones Records. That was a huge milestone of my career as well. I would say actually like the entire year before it was working on that book. Like I got lost in like a decade's worth of hard drives going through all my work, because this was going to be like the book that shows it for the first time all together. And then after that, I was really focused on music, not making music, but working with musicians. And I started a record label actually with a good friend of mine who is in a band. His name Greg Pucciato. We started a record label called Federal Prisoner early 2020, right around the beginning of the pandemic, which was very weird timing because we started the record label and then I released my own record on it as well, which came along with the book in September 4th, 2020. Right in the middle of the pandemic. So that's pretty much how I spent, the pandemic time, was launching a record label, which was insane, just truly insane. And then, after that, it was kind of, well, actually after that, I had a solo show in LA, which was my last solo show. And that was October 2020. And that was middle of the pandemic too. The pandemic was fucking crazy for me apparently. But that was really like, the last thing I did pre-NFT, I would say, was that solo show, because after that, I took off. I just went back to my cabin in Wisconsin. I spent some time on the East Coast. I wasn't doing a whole lot of, work outwardly in like commissions and stuff like that. And then I met you. And then from there, I mean, from there, it all took off with the NFTs.
Wow. Like one thing that, first time I, as you know, I've been following your work from, the very early Tumblr days. And I remember, when I saw your work, like it was really incredible how you could, in a way, combine on a visual level, music and fashion. I mean, like I could really feel that this piece of art was also so connected with culture somehow. Which is something unique, in my opinion, for a general piece of art. And I think, for example, like in fashion, maybe someone who managed to do that on a fashion level in a way, I think, was Virgil Abloh. Because like when you were watching like a show, but in a way you could brief also the inspiration and the music, and the culture that so is much more like it carries a richer feeling, especially to who is part of that specific culture. How, I mean, were you feeling in a way that your work could not be framed on a very specific, on a very specific type of work?
Yeah, I've never been able to be like pinned down at all, like for better and for worse, honestly. But for me, I can't just do one thing. I call it creative ADD, like I have creative attention deficit disorder, because like I work on one thing for a while and then I'll work on another thing. I don't think I have ADD in general, because I can work forever and like focus on work and practice in general all day and night. But as I'm working, it has to be all these different things or whatever. So it's just like this creative ADD. But what you're saying about like somebody like Virgil Abloh as well, which I mean, I can't even begin to compare myself to, but I understand what you're saying, because I think it's like a different kind of artist. It's a different kind of creator that is more than just, they create a static image that I don't even know how to say it. It's almost as if they're a conduit for everything that they loved, and that gets transformed into something completely unique and original, but it's completely informed by all of that, because like, again, I see myself as a conduit for it all. I like, as this is all like funneling through me and then coming out as this, like I'm adding to it and it's more. I think about this all the time, actually, like constantly about, I'm not trying to create a new world, really. Like, it's my world. I'm putting my world out there for sure, but I'm not trying to like change the world or like create the world. What I'm trying to do is show people how I see the world and how I translate the world. So like everything that I make is like an artifact of like something that gets popped out of like this generative machine that's taking in all the information of the world and then like popping out artifacts or something, Does that make any sense?
Absolutely, bro. And it's like also the side of, also the side of bringing commerce somehow, or a commerce approach into art is something really, really difficult. You know, I think Warhol can be kind of like the gurus of this. But when I see your work, the great thing is to see how all these influences are combined in a sort of a new form of art. And that's what really it always inspired me, you know, about your work. And I think for both of us, like suburban cultures have been a great source of inspiration. You know, we chat a few times about that. So I wanted to ask you, like, do you think it still makes sense to speak about suburban culture in this new digital era?
It's a really good question. Thought about this a lot too. Like, does subculture exist anymore? Like, is there such, really thing as that? Because everything gets exposed and like it blows up so fast now. Like the age of a subculture grows and ages incredibly fast compared to what it used to. Like how long was like the punk movement? How long did that last? Like a decade or something, And like
Yeah.
same with like grunge and same with like hair metal. I'm just thinking of music ones, but like these are like they last chunks of time. And nowadays it feels like they don't, like there isn't any, even like it's just like this mashup of everything before just constantly happening, and like it's even hard to try to compartmentalize the subculture anymore. Like what do you use to define a subculture? Because at one point it was defined by the music, that they listen to, and the fashion, right? and
Yep.
and now and now we have fucking, like, who doesn't listen to every kind of music anymore? Like metal, hip hop, fucking every reggae, country, folk. It's like all getting mashed up. The fashion's all mashed up too. It's like, goth slash fucking country is a fucking thing now. Like what is
Yeah.
what? Like what? So what do you use? You can't use music anymore because music.
Streetwear became couture, you know.
Right. And yeah, truly, right. And I mean, and
Yeah.
now you're even seeing, I can't even remember the name of the guy because I don't listen to his music per se, but there's that country dude who dresses streetwear with like cowboy boots, and he's a rapper, but he liked country music and shit. And I don't know what you would use to define a subculture anymore until this is kind of the point that I was thinking before I came to crypto art, and with crypto art, I was like, oh, okay, that we are finding a whole new way to define a subculture, by their
Exactly.
actions, by like their mentalities, ethics, kind of even. But what am I looking for here, Sky? It's like being defined, like defining the subculture more by like early adoption to something, or being first or something,
Or
I don't
maybe
know.
a trend of behavior, like also,
Yeah,
you know, like
yeah, yeah,
like a set of behaviors that sort of create a category, you know. But I mean, when we were young, like we used to see forums, for example, you know, as something like a little bit away from reality, you know, like
yeah.
so the epicenter was still happening really on these together of people, you know, people together just expressing the same style,
Yeah,
fashion, attitude,
and that,
etc. So yeah.
it is true, and it's exactly the same. And when you put it that way, it is the same because it is a trend of behavior, and that's always what it's been. That starts a subculture, and then they use stuff like fashion and music as signifiers that they are part of the subculture to signify to other people, I am one of you or I am not one of you. But now with crypto and with this on the internet, you don't have those things. So it's like it's a different set of signifiers, maybe, or something.
Yeah, it's like a meta suburban
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe
I
we're inventing that
yeah,
right now, like this
yeah,
term
maybe.
meta subculture, meta
Yeah,
culture.
meta subculture. I think that's the only way
Yeah.
to kind of see an evolution of it, because I think that suburban culture as we knew it is a sort of something that is a sort of a vintage term, in my
Yeah, I
opinion. You
think
know,
so
like
too.
I think these days is really more mixed into technology somehow. So it's, you know, it's gonna be so interesting to see. And what I think FakeWhale is also trying to do, you know, is like to bring back the spotlight on creating this
That
sort
really,
of, you know,
yeah.
style and, you know, approach on putting together people not only on a content level but also on a visual level, you know, on an intent level, on a style level. I think these things are super important. I mean, for me they are, and I know for a fact they are for you too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it like this conversation's bringing some things up that's working some things out in my head, because I've been like, I think about subculture all the time. Like, you know, that like
Yeah,
my thesis in college was on the commodification of subculture, like literally what we're talking about how like major brands and corporations and stuff started using subculture aesthetics as
yeah,
like a false form of authenticity to buyers, to et cetera, et cetera. But I've always saw, and I'm not a historian whatsoever, so like this is just all personal, like whatever. But I always saw grunge as like the last true subculture, like grunge,
mm-hmm.
like because that was, or and I don't say, I shouldn't say because, but always viewed it that way and never knew why. But I think the reason is because that is the last subculture that started offline, like literally, because what came after grunge was like some weird pop shit and whatever in like the 80s, but that was going on at the same time. But really what came after grunge was like new metal, was like fucking Corn and shit
Mm-hmm.
like that, and
Mm-hmm.
Deftones and shit. And that was on the internet, because that's where I found it, was on the internet, the early fucking days of the internet. So I think that new metal is actually somewhat like the rise of new metal is somewhat responsible during the birth of the internet, but also like that was one of the first subcultures that did have roots on the internet. I remember being in message boards, chat rooms, talking about new metal,
Yeah.
creating new metal tracks and stuff like that. But grunge was born on MTV basically, because the internet killed MTV. So it was like grunge really was maybe the last, you know, true music subculture or something like that. Suburban culture.
That's really interesting, and you know, I on the other hand, I think that, for example, for music, like, and especially for underground music, it you know, this internet era kind of contributed to the spread of a renaissance of underground music. You know, because I think before, really underground music was only if you knew someone who could give you something, you know,
Hmm.
to, you know, because they knew someone who gave it to him, you know, like all the CDs era and before even the tapes, you know, like, whereas these days, I think on, for example, on music, I really can see a true benefit of this global, in a sort of global sharing of information. And, you know, I just wanted to quickly touch on your record label, and, you know, like, if underground music is what you are actually trying to you know, publish, or what sort of approach do you have behind your label, you know, would be nice if you chat a bit about it.
Sure. I want to make one more point on the last thing, is that
Sure.
certainly the internet helped and like created the electronic music, definitely blew up, you know, right? Like huge benefits to that community. And like, I don't know if you'd call that a subculture, because it's like pretty worldwide and like it's huge and massive, but like that culture definitely exploded thanks to the internet and thanks to like, you know, the rise of technology. But that is definitely, that was a newer subculture. But as far as my record label, yeah, I mean, what, we're not trying to do anything. Like we started the record label with the mission statement of just like, we'll do whatever the fuck we want. Like nobody will tell us no. We're not gonna say what we're gonna do, because then we're limiting ourselves even. You know, like we're not even gonna try to like have like, it's really just anything. We're like, let's do clothes, like if we can, like as much if we can. Let's release records, obviously. Find bands and release records. And yeah, I mean, we'll we'll do anything though. We'll make I don't know. I can't even think of what we wouldn't make, honestly. So we'll do anything. It's a record label, but it's just it's more a creative outlet between me and my friend Greg. And I know that we're gonna push that idea further. This trying to blur a line between a record label and a band and kind of an artist even, or something like that. Like blur the lines between those things. We want to form something that's really not been done before, in the way of like having loyal fans to a record label, not just bands on a label. They're not people that are just like Oh, I love that label. They have the best. They always release good bands. It's like we like that label because that label. You know, like that's a cool.
Yeah.
They do cool shit.
Yeah.
And so we'll see. We'll see what we're gonna do. I mean, we've been really lucky because Greg is obviously really tied into the music scene, being that he was in this band called Dillinger Escape Plan that did pretty well in like the hardcore scene, and because of that, like he has friends and connections all over the place. And we just did like a reissue of Poison the Well record, which is, you know, to a certain crowd a very big deal. Sold those out right away and everything like that. So we have these connections that lead to these opportunities that we're able to do things that are kind of outside of the reach of what it seems we should be capable of, being only a year old record label. But then at the same time, we release, you know, the very first release that had nothing to do with me or Greg was this band called the Nihilists, which is like a tiny black metal band from Chicago. You know, like it just sounds like it was recorded in a trash can, and it's amazing. And so we were able to do that too. And yeah, it's just a fun project, and really, it's taking off. I'm excited to see where it goes.
So again, you know, it's something that try to act on a cultural level more than, you know, closing on into a genre, you know, or like a specific
Yeah,
you know, mind frame to say, oh no, we're gonna do this kind of music, which I think is it's really 90s, no, as concept. So yeah, I also
exactly.
think like, yeah, and the market is changing so much, you know, the music industry, I think we will see several changes. So I think the idea that you're saying of creating a sort of entity somehow that, you know, doesn't have to necessarily correspond to a brand, or like it can be a sort of creative hub, you know, like a an excuse to put like great people together and you know, and just destroy the place basically. I think,
Exactly.
you know, by getting to know you, I'm sure that's what, you know, I'm actually very excited to see
Yeah,
how the label is going to evolve.
I
Like
want to. You touched on something about the '90s approach or whatever, and like when we were starting it, we talked a lot about Sub Pop and like the beginnings of Sub Pop and how that whole thing unfolded. And there's a really great documentary about it. I forgot the name of it, but it's worth watching if you're into that kind of shit. But I watched that documentary a whole bunch, you know, like a lot, like just so like our approach to it was really, and like AM Rep is another record label from the '90s that did it right and stuff like that. So our approach really, you hit it right dead on the head, is like we wanted to do that '90s record label approach, for the artist, by the artist type thing. So definitely
yeah,
hitting right on it. And just, yeah.
PYT. So I think so let's move to NFTs. What do you think?
Okay.
So I mean, bro, like I was just curious, like how was for you entering in the space? Like what was your first impression? Sort of like how did you feel the transition? Because, you know, I remember like first time that we met, you know, you were still kind of considering, you know, the idea of, you know,
Hmm.
getting slowly into it, and then I could see luckily that you grew with this
Yeah.
momentum, and with this. So how was, you know, like this sort of transition? Like how did you live it? How did you feel it?
Do you remember when we met? Was it March or was it February? Do you remember?
I don't remember the exact month, but probably, what is it, 1 year ago, more or less,
Yeah. Well, it's over a
something
year
like that.
now.
Over a year
Over a
now,
year
yeah,
now. Yeah.
something like that.
But yeah, you hit me up. I think it was March, I think, or February. But either way, that was kind of like the first big push. But like late 2020, I had people hitting me up being like, "Yo, what do you think of NFTs? What's, you know?" And at that time, I was just like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." I was, I mean, if I'm being honest, I mean, I was in like Wisconsin in like one of the worst emotional states of my life. So like, I wasn't even paying attention to fucking, you know, consensus reality. But it was early 2021 that more people started being like, hey, what's up with NFTs? And I started looking into it, researching it on my own. Before that, I was into crypto. I've been into crypto for a minute, you know, for years.
Okay.
So I was intrigued right away. Whereas a lot of people that I was in communication with at the time, in like the traditional art world and stuff, were very anti it immediately, just like without even. It was the weirdest thing because they were just like so against it, and I didn't even understand it yet. I couldn't, and I read more than they did. So I was like, what the fuck? these people are just hating on it, saying that they don't understand, which I guess that makes sense. People hate things they don't understand. But I was just curious.
That's why they hate. That's why they
Exactly.
hate.
Exactly. So and I knew that at the time too. It was like, I just don't understand this. I mean, things are happening here that's very cool. I knew it all along, but I just didn't feel capable or understanding enough of it until I met you, really, until like I talked with you. And I know you and I then, when I first met you, I didn't think much of it. Like, no offense to you, that's nothing personal. I just didn't think much of NFTs still or whatever. But then, if you remember, you and I continued to have conversations kind of. It was kind of random, like, yo, and then we would just talk for a little while. And you really like helped me a lot in those little conversations to understand even just the fundamental beginnings of it all. Just those conversations that we had at the beginning. And then, you know, you were able to include me in a show on Super Rare, and that was where I had my first mints, which I believe was early June. And then you and I collaborated on our piece as well. That was Antimatter, which dropped in June. So the month leading up to that was really me really wanting to get in, but waiting for the right time. I did my due diligence and spent time and watched and listened and didn't mint for months and months until the right time, you know.
You know, to be honest with you, this is the perfect approach. Like when people ask me, like, should I get into NFT or whatever? Like what I always say is like, please take your time to try to kind of understand it first a bit. You know, there's no need to rush. Like we are so early, so I think that to really put some time to understand. For me, was exactly the same. You know, I didn't like when I joined early 2020. I didn't mint immediately. I took like 2-3 months just to really understand, you know, because it's really new. Like once you get it, it becomes super obvious, you know, like, but before that, you have a bit of, you know, time that you have to go around it to fully embrace it, you know. So,
I
but
100%. Well, what I was gonna say, fuck, I forgot because I lit this. No, I wanted to say something about that. Sorry.
about the early stage.
Well, about the early stages and about waiting a while beforehand and everything like that. About I wanted to ask you something. I forgot. Like about like how did you do research was kind of it, because for me there was like you helped me a lot, and then there was other people and I was able to observe, but for you when you started there wasn't that to observe. Like what did
No,
that mean for you?
yeah, so I same. I've been helped by people because, like, I remember that first thing I was seeing. There was this decentralized social media which was called Cent, and that's actually where I saw the word crypto art for the first time.
Oh,
You know, and when I saw it, I was like, crypto art. Oh, wait, let's. I need
yeah.
to know what it is. You know, so and then browsing through this, I was seeing the name Super Rare popping few times. So went to see the website, and then I think I don't remember, but I joined either the Discord or the Telegram, wherever, and there I could see for the first time people that were talking exclusively about this. And then I met, I think, Fabiello there, who is an Italian artist. Shout out to him. And he was like, "Look, come into this Telegram group." Which was Crypto Art Italia at that time. There were 150 people. Can you imagine? But the Hakata
That's
was
awesome.
there, you know, like many, Fabiano Speziari, many of the Italian OGs were there. And then that's it. Like I really spent time there. And then luckily I really connected well with with Mattia Cuttini, and he became a bit what I have been for you. So he really, you know, taught me the basics, and so I think, yeah, the great thing is the great thing that can be summarized from this is that this community has been really welcoming, you know, and this has been taught to me by the first people, and that's what I'm trying to
Yeah,
also and I
you
think
pay it
now
forward.
for you it's gonna be the same, you know, like,
Already
so
is, yeah. I think
this
that if
is a
you
very
approach
good,
it right, yeah, if you approach it
you know,
right,
this,
it kind of gives
yeah.
returns. And for me, I mean, I still am learning. I still like, I don't, I think when I started minting when I think back to that time, I still had no idea like, I feel like I didn't know a thing still, you know? So like, how long did it take for you before you felt like you really
Well,
understood? Because I mean,
about
you have to kind of interact with it to start understanding it and
yeah,
mint a little
no, I
bit.
think 2 3 months. 2 3 months was like, and then I decided. I remember like even the Hakatao was there, so I also had some good example that I could kind of check, and see what they did, blah blah blah. But then again, Mattia helped me, because then once I understood, I was like, okay, Matti, do you want to do this first token with me? And he accepted that. So even by having him and his experience to kind of show me, the way of my first token, blah blah blah. So I think, yeah, but like 2 3 months is really really the minimum, that you need to spend to kind of be around it. And 2 days much, so it's easier from one side because you have more information, but it's harder because now the NFT is super intricate as a system. So there are many blockchains, there are the collectibles, which is another thing. There are many marketplaces. So maybe today is a little bit more complicated on that sense. But again, as soon as you get it becomes a sort of a rabbit hole, especially if you are an upcoming artist that, you know, trying to find way to express work. Sometimes I think it gets harder for more established artists, because you
Mm.
kind of tend to feel that you have something to lose somehow on trying on risking this new thing. But at the end of the day, I think that's a very important exercise. Like I personally don't agree when I find sort of a wall, in front of certain positions, because what could be more exciting for an artist than understanding a new technological impact? And even if let's not go to the art side, but let's stay to the market, like even the way this thing has quickly shifted the market attitude and the way of selling art online. I mean, I think it's super interesting, no? So kudos to you, because you had the guts to, you of course were already a very well established artist, but you said, you know what, like I wanna understand, like I wanna try.
Um,
uh
but also to what you're saying, like it is the most exciting thing to me is new opportunities, new tech, new ways of doing something like that. Like I'm always on to like the next, like I always want to know what's new and what's coming or whatever.
exactly.
And for me, I was at a point of being completely disenfranchised with everything I was doing before NFTs, commission work, uh, just everything I was doing really, like all sorts of commission, just showing in galleries. I was over it. Like I was just like, this is all eating my soul. I don't like any of it anymore. I don't see. It's not to put any of those things down, but it's more to say like none of this is like my soul's path. Like my soul isn't drawn to trying to make it in like the fine art scene and selling in galleries and becoming that kind of artist in that system, because I saw the fine art system and it was ugly and disgusting, and you had to do things that I wasn't ever going to do to make it. And I was like, well,
Mm-hmm.
okay, fuck that. And then I saw, well, with commissions, I'm like, well, my work is not being valued at what it's worth, and people are disrespecting it and disrespecting me and trying to underpay me. That's not it either. My soul is not drawn towards that path. And I was like, fuck, I'm just going to go live in a cabin. Not because I have to, but because it's like, I don't think the thing for me is out there. I don't think the creative path that I need exists. And then you came along, and NFTs came along, and and I don't even want to see NFTs because that's just technology, but crypto art scene, or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call this art movement that has nothing to do with anything besides this group of people that all believe in this tech, I guess is what it is. Um, I feel like I belonged, I feel a sense of belonging in this community more than I ever have. So I'm just waiting for this. So what you were saying about like what's not more exciting? I mean, for me, I mean, you couldn't be more true.
Yeah, and actually, one thing that I wanted to ask you, that I always wanted to ask you, is because I could see myself, like once I started to create NFTs, like somehow my creative process changed, you know, because I never gave so much importance to the final outcome in the digital realm, you know. So for
Hmm.
me, it was a real big evolution of my creative process. You know, I always kind of saw digital art as a sort of complementary part of my work, whereas when I joined the NFT, I actually started a completely new exploration. You were already really into, you know, digital kind of elements and things, but how has your creative process somehow been affected by entering in the NFT? Has it evolved? Has it changed? And if so, how?
Um, it brought back the sense of play. You said something that I want to touch on. Sorry, but I will come back to it. It definitely has increased my sense of play. Like I haven't felt like I do in the studio now lately when I'm working, like since the beginning of like my career back, like at the very beginning when I didn't even have clients yet, you know, where I was just a kid that was uh living in an attic and just you know, partying way too much, serving at a restaurant, and then with every single spare moment I had, I would make art, and that meant like just sitting in like a room with books and magazines and spray paint and acrylic paint and just all this shit, and just having no idea what the fuck to do, but getting high and just fucking doing shit, painting it on the walls and shit, and like that to me, when I look back at that time, it was like it was a dark time because of where I was in my life and shit like that. But as a creator, it was the most exciting time in my career as a creator of just like, you know, the very beginning where I was just like, and yeah, here we have a picture of me as a very young creator. But yeah, I feel more now like the kid in that picture than I have, you know, since then. Because of, and I feel it's because of the few things like I sold some pieces on super rare, so I have the financial freedom to take time and experiment, and have fun, which I constantly am, you know, preaching within this scene of like such a benefit to the crypto art, NFTs and stuff is the creative freedom that it allows. But also like the sense of play that's alive within the crypto art community is just visible every day. Like you scroll through Tumblr
Mm-hmm.
or Tumblr, oh my God. You scroll through Twitter, you scroll through Twitter and you go on these platforms, you go on Object, you go on Hen and all these places, and like it's all ripe with creativity and experimentation. I feel like experimentation within the crypto art scene is like part of the it's like part of what makes crypto art. Crypto art is experimentation in a way. Because well, I guess because NFTs are completely new, so I guess it's like the medium is new in the end. But you just see so much varied kinds of work that it inspires you to try all these different things. And yeah, it, you know, and I'll draw a parallel to Tumblr because I just said it, but that's a, I mean, that's back when I was looking at Tumblr a lot. I was very inspired back then.
Yeah.
There was nothing, there was no commerce involved with it at that point either. It was like just making your own mood boards of images and being inspired by it. And at that time, I was like very much going to my own Tumblr blog uh, of works that I've curated and like being inspired and creating works that were inspired by my Tumblr. And there was this interaction there and stuff. And I'm feeling that interaction again, where I feel like some of the work that I'm doing is visually without ever actually talking to them. I felt that sense on Tumblr too, like seeing what somebody was doing, creating work that was complementary to it, knowing that they're going to see it and be like, oh, you know, like there's this like telepathic kind of artistic communication where you're seeing,
Yes.
you know what I mean?
True. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. And as we always say when we chat, like I think this was even more evident on Tezos, on you know,
Yeah.
on the Tezos community. I think that was because coming from a sort of an evolution of what was in ETH, and you know, maybe also the fact of low gas fee like created this moment where there was almost a cohesive language, you know, which is a bit the difference between if, in my opinion, you know. And that's why
Absolutely.
being as so fascinated with suburban cultures, etc., we immediately detected this trend, and we were like super fascinated, and we still are. Yeah, so I totally get that. And actually, I wanted, before going a bit into the Tumblr days that you mentioned, like I remember once when we spoke, you gave a definition of a personal definition,
Mm.
not a, uh, overall definition, but your personal definition of digital art, and that really remained with me. Would you mind to just share it?
Sure. If I remember right, I was making the point that digital art is any art that was created with the sole intent, like knowing in advance that this art is going to exist and or not exist, but be seen on a screen. That it
Yeah,
doesn't matter how you got to that point.
online.
Online, yes, on a screen online. Like that's the point. That idea started with me at the beginning of Tumblr days. Started with me way back then. This idea of like what is digital art, you know, because I knew digital artists too, that called them, but that was like you're making the art with a computer, and I was
Yeah,
like, well,
different.
yeah, and I'm like, okay, well, I think digital art, you know, it's just a personal thing that I came up with at a young age, but it's sprung from this. I used to have a friend, and they would come over and we would work together just in the studio, just like fuck off. We'd get drunk and fucking, you know, whatever, just make a huge mess of shit and talk about art. And they were also very involved in Tumblr at the time or whatever. And it was really like my only friend at the time that was on my level with that, like was into the same shit, you know? And I remember telling him one time during one of our fucking sessions of working, like, that I said, yo, dude, I'm embarrassed to say this. Like, and I actually said that I was embarrassed, but I was like, I'm embarrassed to say this, but like, I no longer make work like that I care what it looks like in real life anymore. Like, I'm done with that. Like, I make all my work only with the intent, like, what's this going to look like online? And I don't even care if there is a physical representation of it anymore. Like, as long as I get that image. And I told him that, and like I was like, man, I mean, because at the time, I mean, we're talking like 2010, over a decade ago, that was bad. That was blasphemous to art. That was like, oh, you're not a real artist, blah blah blah, you know. And so I was like saying it like, don't tell anybody, you know. But this is my thing. I'm making art that only looks good online. And I was like,
But
dude, well, at the time, I was like already showing in galleries locally, and that's not going to do anything for you. So I came to this conclusion of like, okay, I live in the Midwest. I've already shown in like, you know, big galleries here, and it's not getting me anywhere. I'm done with this. I'm going to focus just online. That was kind of the idea. That was kind of the beginning of the big Tumblr following, was like a very intentful move towards online presence. My work looks good online. It exists online. It's made for online. When I first started showing in galleries, which was, you know, years later, I had to reverse engineer a lot of my work to be physical again, because like they thought it was, you know, like I had to reverse engineer the work. And then when they would be like, what are the dimensions of it? I would be like, well, anything you fucking want, you know, like it can be any, because you can change digitally, you can change the size of it. And they didn't understand like that I was considering the digital version like the real version of it, and that I was just making a version of it to put in their gallery. Like it was a very, like 2014, 2015, it was still very fucking weird, I guess, for the traditional art world and gallerists to understand like this process that I was doing. And I've paid for it. I've suffered for it, honestly. That's like
yeah,
lack of
but
understanding.
Yeah, but you know, that's why I always tell you, like, for example, now we say that we when you say that, it almost looks like normal from where art evolved and the behavior evolved. But at that time was something completely out of the mind. You know, it was not contemplated. That's why I always tell you that you, in my opinion, you are one of the most influential creators, you know, like on the digital art scene, that really wrote the creation of what you call digital art, and I agree. I mean, maybe we should find a new word in a way, because as you say, digital art is anything that has to do with technology somehow from the 60s can be considered. But I agree with you, like this specific type of digital art really was born with the internet and with the fruition of content through internet, and with the intent of doing art to show it online. And this is crazy. And I think Tumblr played such a major role at that time, because it was the first time that there was a sophistication of the aesthetic online, you know, like since then there was nothing like that. Like it was like, I remember, me too, like I was spending countless hours there just for inspo and just for seeing what other people were doing. It was the first time that something like that was so overwhelming, you know?
Yeah,
And
it was part of my studio practice. Like I remember I had a tiny studio apartment in St. Paul, Minnesota, and my computer would be open with Tumblr on it all day. And the rest of my studio was just littered with all my art supplies, but it was just part of my process. Tumblr, open on it, scrolling, doing stuff, back to work with this stuff. It was just part of it.
and your images were already rocking, like you like, I always, like, I remember I was that's where basically I started to know your work. And but I think what generally we tend to see the NFT movement as a sort of the evolution of the technology, but I think there is not enough attention on the sociological and on what brought the content to then be perceived as valuable as NFT. And I think
would
in
say that
this,
there's like none. There's actually like
yeah,
no talk
exactly,
about that.
exactly. I think we should, yeah, I think we should get more deeper on that, like, because even in the future, because I think that, for example, Tumblr, you know, and it was, I think, this really in a way dark, sophisticated, dark, and then post-Soviet was also like, wow, super, you know, like, and then the thing started to evolve into Pinterest and Instagram. Actually, Instagram, you know, like, see how Instagram played a role for 3D art, you know, like all these 3D artists that then eventually, when they joined the NFT, they finally could. And
Instagram was
Pinterest
the
with
Tumblr killer. Instagram was the Tumblr killer.
Instagram was a
Like, no
Tumblr
doubt.
killer, absolutely. And Pinterest, even with I had also a period that I was always browsing Pinterest, because I was very fascinated to vaporwave, for example, works, and like Pinterest. So I think that this evolution that went through social media, it then really shaped our perception and built the reason why today we also perceive a content which only exists online as valuable. And I think this is a very important thing that not many, I rarely heard this around in
Yeah, I've never heard anybody else besides you and I talk about that, and I love it. I hope, yeah, I was just about to say, I hope so. You wrote this down, but it's recorded, so we have this on record. But like, I think we definitely should do something that highlights this, you know, like the aesthetic in the sociological movement of the aesthetic, not just the tech, you know, like not just who minted first. Like that's most important. That you minted first. It's like, no,
yeah,
it's not.
even because, like, even Xcopy, for example, you know, has this story that started from, you know, like, even,
I would say
and
all the good ones do. I mean, I interviewed Robness just last week or a couple weeks ago or whatever, and you know, he was doing all his shit before too. He has a story that leads right up to, and it makes sense or whatever. So like the good ones do. I mean, you too as well. I also want to make another point. Another, not even another point, but just a funny thing that sticks out in my mind was when to highlight this interesting time of like of the internet and people, like not everybody in 2010 was on the internet at all. Like that wasn't like common really, even, I guess you could say. Maybe it was common, but it wasn't like today. It wasn't pervasive like it is today.
For sure.
So yeah. And so like when I was in college, I went to college or I have a degree in illustration, and my senior class, even though I was on Tumblr already, I was being told by my teacher to get jobs, I had to send in physical portfolios, like hard copy and cold telephone call agents and shit. Like that's what I was learning in school while I'm on Tumblr making my career as like an online artist already. Crazy time of trying to understand what the fuck to do there. But coming out of school and then finally getting a following, I built a following online. The following online is what brought galleries to the table. It made them like starting a following and getting traction on Instagram is what brought the galleries really like specifically one gallery in New York to the table. And they came to Los Angeles, and I remember in that meeting, they said just point blank that it is extremely hard to get a artist who is popular on the internet to do well in real life galleries. That's what they told me straight up. They're just like, successful artists online that created an online following have the most hard time. Like it's very rare, it never happens that they actually get actual mainstream success or like success in the traditional market. That was 2016. That was only 6 years ago. That was only 6 fucking years ago, dude. How much did Pac make this year, the last couple of years? You know, like 300 billion or no, 300 million, something like that. It's like, whoa, like in 6 years, we went from like being popular on the internet will not get you anywhere to
yes, that's crazy. Yeah, but if you think about it, it was more like crazy before. Like, you know, in my opinion, is almost more normal now somehow, you know, because because tech companies, they were very smart, you know, and what I always like to say is, you know, whereas www was a technology for everyone to build, you know, social media since day one was always associated to a brand, you know. So from day one on social media, there has been a sort of product approach, and that led companies to also use basically all the art and the contents that was placed in there to generate revenue, which is crazy if you think about it, you know. Now with Web3, it's again, you know, is again decentralized and is again a technology with no brand. So, you know, Web 1 was decentralized, Web 2 was centralized, Web 3 is decentralized and is a technology and has no brand. And this why, in my opinion, is very interesting, because no one is putting a flag. You know, it's like, it's a technology for everyone to succeed or whatever, or express or make business, doesn't matter. But so that's definitely, I mean, that was meant to happen. It was crazy how big tech companies were just doing what the fuck they wanted, you know, like just using super lobby power and to have such a big number of users that, you know, because in reality we think that we live in such a model where we can choose so many things, but in reality we were choosing between 1-2 things, you know, to move, you know, like you go online, you go Google, you want a social media, you go Instagram. That's crazy, bro. Like,
it really is
crazy. And now it is.
What you're saying, I love how you just was like, well, it makes more sense now. It's like, yeah, you did. I mean, that immediately hit me, because it's like, yeah, it does. But I didn't think that, just because we've been conditioned for the last, 5-10 years about like how it just is. But you're right.
Exactly.
And when you said like it makes more sense now, and like the way I viewed it before is like, this is a correction, to that, because, and I might have said this so many times in various, fucking interviews and places or whatever, but like the example of like, well, putting my art online for the last decade on Tumblr, on wherever else, in Pinterest, on fucking Instagram and shit, I didn't get paid for any of that. Not a single fucking post, not a single image, like what I just put it out there, and it was just, free for everybody to be inspired by, to look by, for brands to put on their fucking mood boards, which became a meme. It's a meme now. It's a meme now. The fact that like brands just would use visuals from artists, put it on their mood board, and then hire people for a fraction of the cost to replicate their mood board of art. It was, and like not hire the person to be inspired by it. That's a meme now. Like, I can't wait to be on this brand's mood board and not be hired by them, you know, like, but that's the world that the visual artist was living in within that Web 2 dynamic of the social media dynamic of Instagram, Facebook, and all that shit, where you just put your fucking throw your workout into the fucking, you know, void basically, because nothing, you know, the best thing that you can get from that is a client. You can get somebody being like, hey, will you do that for me? And we're going to pay you like a fraction of what you're worth. You know, that's a broken fucking system, you know? And
maybe can you, and maybe can you change that little, can you move it? Please, can you move it on the right?
We're going to have like 5 rounds of edits, and we're going to be so heavy-handed that at the end of this, like, it's not even going to look like anything that you're proud of, and you're going to be extremely pissed off. And then we're not going to pay you for 3 months.
Yeah.
And then you're going to actually have to email us later asking to get paid. Yeah. It was the most demoralizing dynamic, you know. In the comparison I always made is like how a lot of musicians are very vocal about how they get like 0.03% of a penny for every Spotify play or something, like a stream, shit like that. And it's like, for artists, we never got anything, nothing, like for every look or for something, you know, every like. And I always said, like, and I brought this up, I think, in the Robness interview too, but like for years I've been saying, imagine if these likes were just like even a fraction of a penny, man. Like, if, you know, like what 10,000 likes, if you get like a fraction of a penny for 10,000 likes, could equal up to enough to buy food, pay rent for a month if you get enough of the following. But that never happened. But now this seems like what it is. It's like,
yeah, it is gonna be the trend. I mean, I'm totally sure that, like, as I always say, like, I think the NFT is, yeah, I mean, the more revolutionary aspect of NFT is gonna be more in a sort of social media type slash commerce level, you know. I mean, my hope is that in reality NFT is simply gonna be like an accepted medium for art, but like I think the revolution that brought was mostly, you know, related to the market, you know. And I think that certain concepts such as social media as we know it today is, I mean, my hope is that NFT will shape the new the new way to inspire people to create contents, because they can do it, and, you know, that's a good way, and that's, by the way, is a healthy way of living a life, you know. Because I think while we create content, while we are creating content, we are consumers too. So at the end of the day, I think, you know, is a sustainable system, because it doesn't mean that if you create revenue, you're not consuming, you know, or if you're creating content. So I think that kind of inspiring new generations on you know, thinking of a bit out of the box and finding their own inspiration on a creative side. That's my big hope, you know. That's where I see NFTs really impacting, a potential of impact, really, really strong.
100%.
Okay, bro. So for this final part of the interview, I wanted to move a little bit more on art. So I want to start with a very difficult question.
Oh, shit.
So, what is the purpose of your art? Do you have any?
Yeah, it's like, I'm not like a physicist or anything, but from my understanding of like nuclear energy systems or something, right, is that if you don't unleash or let out the pressure, they melt down, right? Like you have to kind of like, and that's me. I feel like if I don't, like, the point of my art is extremely selfish. It's that if I don't do it, I don't know what else I would do. And if I didn't do anything, I think I would explode. I think I would I don't know what would happen to me, man. I think like, just cease to exist. I don't know. But like, that's how I view it. It's an outlet. Sometimes it's extremely painful. Sometimes it's extremely fun and joyous. But like the point of my art, if I have to say, if there's one point, you know, just one point, is that it's just the valve, man. It's just like the valve that I gotta let out the pressure. You know, I gotta to be a stable energy system.
So it's a sort of therapeutic you know, it's like it's a sort of a
It
terror
is,
on
but
it.
I don't like that word, you know. I don't
Okay.
like I get asked that a lot, like, oh, is art therapeutic for you? And it's like, it's more than, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, because that's only half of it. That's like asking, like,
Mhm.
oh, so you live a happy life. It's like, well, sometimes it's happy and sometimes it's sad and it's all the things in between, but that's my art too. My art is my life. So it, like, sometimes making art is painful and it sucks and it's not therapeutic. It actually makes me need therapy. You know, like, sometimes I get so involved and wrapped up in that shit that, like I drive myself crazy and throw myself into deep depressions because of my art practice and the way that I go about it. And I'm aware of this, but it's how it goes. It's part of that system. And like, so like, in that way it's therapeutic because it is. I'm working through all of the emotions and I'm working through all of my darkest shadows, interior, you know, of my interior world. So it's therapeutic at times, and sometimes it makes me need the therapy in the first place because
Yeah.
it's just my life.
Okay. That's great. Thanks
It's
for
just
your
a
answer,
mirror.
bro.
Yeah.
So, you know, in a way you could say that you are the purpose of your art.
Yeah. And yeah.
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 That makes sense. That's great. That's a great
but
answer in my
but
opinion.
in that way, like, so does that make it, so I struggle with it because that's extremely narcissistic, you know, like, to be so self-centered. That's how it can be viewed, right? And like, in one hand, like, sure, I'm extremely self-centered. Everybody is to some degree, not to try to say like make that okay or whatever, but like, um I am, and I embrace that, and I admit that. But like, I don't know, it just, I struggle with it sometimes because it can come across just so selfish, and I don't want to be selfish or come across selfish, because I also get great joy when I get these artists writing me being like,
Yeah.
your art helped me and
Yeah, of
it
course.
showed me this or that, or I learned or whatever. So it's nuanced, but if I had to say one thing, again, like I said, it is, I am the purpose of the work. It's very,
You have to balance it. You have to balance it for sure. But the point is, in my opinion, if you want to make good art, obsession is sort of
yeah.
the gateway to do it. Like, I mean, I actually, there was a question that was for later, but I'm gonna anticipate it because it's very related. So,
Okay.
you know, recently I met a friend that I wasn't seeing for a while, you know, and like luckily in this, I don't know, from 1 year now I can be totally 100% focused on my work, on being artist as a profession, you know, like being like really focused on my work and don't have to do anything else, you know. And I was explaining to this guy, I was like, yeah, you know, like for the first time in my life, I can just focus. I can just solely focus on my art, which in a way has always been my dream. And he was like, ah, okay. So that means you basically you're not doing fuck all, you know. but that made me laugh a lot, no? Because in reality, as you were really nicely saying, sometimes this the dimension can become so absorbing that it's kind of unhealthy somehow and really dissociative, you know. So the question was like, do you feel that the idea of being an artist can be related to sacrifice somehow?
Mm. Well, not all artists, obviously, you know, because there's different ways of doing it, and some artists have, well, I don't know, it's a really good question in a lot of ways. Like, I just have to kind of simplify it in my head real quick, because you could view everything as sacrifice if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But art, I mean, the way that I do it, you know, like the kind of artist that I am, and I think a lot of the artists I admire, they're really pulling from a deep well within themselves. And I think to do that requires a lot of time alone, and a lot of time in your own thoughts, you know, which is, it can be difficult. And some people can't be alone at all. I'm
Yeah.
alone the majority of the time, like the vast majority of the time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that is a sacrifice. I mean, you sacrifice your mental health, your physical health, going into that isolation so deep within yourself can be really difficult. You encounter places and things you don't want to, you know, sometimes, and shit, and have to
Yeah.
deal with things through all that. And through that is a lot of sacrifices. I mean, I don't even have the idea, like, I don't know, like, most people have this life plan laid out of, like, you know, like, relationship, kids, you know, whatever, career, blah blah blah, you know, social life. etc. And like for an artist that needs so much time in isolation to work through their thoughts and ideas and process themselves or whatever in a way that they're able to output stuff is a huge sacrifice in that way. Like you're giving up all that. Yeah, I guess.
So what you're trying to say, correct me if I'm wrong, is like life is a sacrifice in a way. So
Yeah.
I mean, at least you choose your sacrifice.
Yeah, that's a good
You
way
know,
of
like,
putting it.
yeah, and I think I really relate to this as well, you know, but I feel it as a sacrifice, but it's not a sacrifice that
Yeah, you
kind
choose your
of,
sacrifice.
yeah,
I like
exactly.
that
You
because
chose it.
yeah, because there, yes, that's a really good way to say it, because I think the reason I don't that doesn't sit right sometimes is because I'm not a victim of anything. You know, like sacrifice sounds like it hurts or painful, but I guess that's the definition of sacrifice, that you choose to do it. So it's not that.
Yeah.
It's not that you're a victim of. I'm not a victim of art. I guess
No,
maybe you
no,
could say that. Am I an art victim or
no.
art victim?
No, because sacrifice, if you think about it, is a very deep concept in reality. You know, even if you go and analyze the origin of this
Yeah.
word, etc., like it is also like exercising something somehow. You know, like for example, you know that how I exercise the illogical side of realities in a way by being an artist and being able to appreciate also that part, which if I had to conduct a rational life, I would just in a way had to pretend that doesn't exist,
Yeah.
because otherwise I couldn't you know, I couldn't progress in a rational path, you know. And another curiosity is, like, for example, a few months ago, Mattia Cuttini came. We met for the first time in my studio in Italy, and he came and we spent 1 week, 1 week in the studio just creating, you know.
That's cool.
And I was so fascinated because, for example, like he was sitting like on a corner with like a desk, and he used this really nice technique of handmade rubber stamps, you know.
Yeah.
But he was starting like, and for 4 or 5 hours he was just like, you know, like harmonically like doing this, and
Wow.
I could see him find peace, and like in this suspended uh, time, you know, made of repetition, but not in a bad way, in an harmonic way,
Yeah.
you know, almost as a east you know, sort of more zen approach, you know. Whereas when I work, it's like a battlefield, you know, like I'm beating up the canvas, you know, I'm
Yep.
painting four canvas at a time, like I
Yep.
spill everything, I make myself dirty, I need to feel this. So my question is, what side are you? Like, are you finding
I'm
peace
chaos.
through your chaos too? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm chaos in a studio. I'm an agent of chaos for sure. Yeah. I was just thinking about that myself about
What is the thing that most fulfill you most in your, like, physical practice, or like, what I mean, what gives you more satisfaction in when you do this action, or whatever?
honestly, dude, nothing. Like nothing gives me enough satisfaction. Like nothing gives me enough fulfillment yet in the act of making art. Like I need to I mean, this could go on into another topic, but because like I'm feeling the need to be so physical with my work, like that I want to like just I'm at the point now when I'm painting that I'm painting and I'm like my fingers are full of paint and I'm working with my hands and I'm not in it enough. Like I want to become the medium itself. You know what I mean? Like I
Mm-hmm,
want that.
mm-hmm.
I'm going to the level of physicality where like I wish I was paint because I could just I feel inside myself this like
Nice,
this
nice.
crazy energy of just like in and when it like it builds up so much that I literally just start hitting the shit. Like I'll just start punching and it hurts because I work on the floor. So I'm like punching the floor and that's usually when I start quitting. It's like I get spent and honestly at that point I'm like pissed off. I'm like
That's
fucking
it.
angry that I can't be the medium, that I'm not the
Mm-hmm.
medium enough. So like literally at this point, there's nothing that fulfills me to the extent that I want yet. Like I'm thinking about renting a whole new studio where I just like put up canvases on the walls and put paint, all like dump a bob paint over my head and just run around into the walls or something. Because that level of energy and like and physicality is like what I'm looking for. Honest to like what happens when I get to that point and I'm like just like all of a sudden I'm just like and then I'm like fuck, and then I have to go on a run usually, and it's usually like a 3-mile hard run where it's like a little painful, where I really have to get that energy out. But you know, there's a documentary about him, and I wish I remembered its name, but it's such cool art. This is pretty unrelated, I guess, but it's a dude who puts on, it's an older dude too. He puts on boxing gloves, and then he puts paint on the boxing gloves and punches the canvas.
Okay, yeah.
I think about that all the time. I'm like, fuck, if that guy didn't do that already, I would do that, because that looks fun. Because I mean, he's just like straight up boxing the canvas. Like, what a fun exercise way of doing it. Yeah, I love it. And you know, I want to touch on one other thing, if you don't mind. I was going back about the sacrifice thing, because something that I've been thinking a lot about and you know, reading on and stuff is wow, I don't know if I'm going to be able to encapsulate this, but like when you're like the nature of reality, really, right? And what is truth and stuff like that, and how when we are interacting with other people through society, we're engaging in an illusion, and it's a shared illusion between all of us, right? And when you're constantly interacting with that illusion day in, day out, getting up in the morning, you're getting on the bus, you're getting in a cab, you're interacting with people to do these events that get you to work, and then you're at work and you're sharing in the illusion with everybody there. And you go home to your family and you're sharing the illusion with your wife and your kids or whatever, sharing your illusion with your girlfriend. You're always in the illusion, right? When you're constantly around other people. But as an artist, at least for me, who's isolated 90% of the time, if not 95% of the time, you're no longer part of the social illusion that everybody else is sharing. You're effectively stepping out of reality and entering in what else do you have besides your own, your inner reality and the thoughts in your head that form that reality. And that reality isn't consensus reality. That's not part of the illusion. That's your own illusion, right? That's you and your ego and your personality. So you create your own illusion. 100%. So if you're alone for extended periods of time, I mean this in a literal sense, that you step out of reality, you enter a different dimension. Maybe not your material being, but your physical brain, your brain matter maybe, or your vibration is in a different dimension. I think about this because I'm alone all the time, because when I try to enter back into that social illusion, sometimes it's terribly hard and terribly painful. Sometimes it causes depression. Like trying to interact back with that, not because I become at least so used to my own inner illusion, my own inner world, you know. And I don't mean that inner illusion sounds bad as if you're disillusioned, but what I mean is like my artistic creative world within me that I'm drawing from, that I'm creating from, right? I'm so in that world that when I try to go back into the shared illusion, the societal reality, the consensus reality, it's very difficult sometimes, like very difficult.
It is. And especially for artists like painters or creators like that, because they don't even have, for example, the effect relief with the public. You know, for example, if you're a musician or, you know, if you're a performer, somehow on that you kind of close a circle, no? Because you also have that aspect of the cycle of your creation, whereas, you know, in visual art or painting or, you know, this sort of is much more hard, you know, because you can't compare the energy of a performance with the energy of a person staring at your work into an exhibition, for example. You know, it's a completely different, you know, it's not even close. So yeah, on that sense I feel you, because I think the hardest part is really coming back to what makes us human. Because, you know, and that's hard, because we know it's also our duty somehow to do that. But it's just that it's not easy. It's not easy at all.
Absolutely. Again, not a victim by any means.
No, not a victim, but it's not easy.
But it's not easy, but it is, like you said, it feels like a duty for sure. Like,
but you know, NFT NFT is helping me a lot on this because yeah, I'm opening up a lot. I'm meeting new people. Even what I'm doing today, I didn't even think like 2 years
Dude,
ago to do it. You know,
fucking
something like
bro.
that. You know, like,
I'm hosting this fake whale thing on a regular
exactly. Yeah.
basis. If somebody would have been like, you're gonna do live interviews streaming on Twitter next year, I'd be like, fuck right off. No way. Like that's insane.
Exactly. So I mean, it's great that we are we are trying to
Dude,
to also have this, and I think NFT
yeah,
can be great because the
I think
community
so
level
too.
on that sense is really great. To be honest, you
It
know.
really is. And to bring that full circle, like I've been going to the IRL events and stuff at different NFT, things like Freeze, NFT, NYC, came to Italy. I'm coming to Italy next week for Venice Biennial and doing these
Yeah.
things. And when I interact with the people within the community in real life, man, it it doesn't lose anything. Like it's
No.
welcoming and friendly, and the people I'm on par with and stuff. It's very different than going to like a traditional gallery show. I'll tell you that. Like going to a traditional gallery show, that's a very different vibe than going to these NFT events. Like these crypto art events that are a lot more fun. They're a lot
There is
more
the buzzing.
open.
There is more
Yeah,
buzzing. You know, like
there
people are
definitely is.
excited.
Yeah,
People
it's
are
definitely
excited.
helped me a lot. Like can't, I don't want to overstate it or be hyperbolic or anything, but really like this whole crypto thing, the NFT movement, and then like really throwing myself into it and interacting with it has been such a positive thing of change in my life, like a positive force of change in my life for sure.
Yeah, and it is a way that is gonna affect the art world too, in my opinion. And I've always been, in a way, convinced that the answer is not to erase what is happening around NFTs, but actually to use our experiences to evolve things that are equally important. You know. Because I mean it's just a matter of evolution more than destroying, in my opinion. And I think the energy that we are all spreading, it is sort of contagious. But I mean I can already see things happening, even what FakeWhale is doing as well. Like just this idea of like really connecting with the art world, but like sort of preserving like a Web3 mentality, in the way that partners from the artwork can be approached or whatever. I think that's exactly what we should do. Like I was writing this statement on Twitter that was a bit, it was a statement because it was saying like, we should stop focus on being happy that this is a new thing, but instead we should, for us now is for granted, like for us now is obvious, like I mean I think that think to be part of something new should be almost considered as old fashioned, like
Hmm.
that was some 2020 or 21 shit, like I think now,
Yeah,
we should enter on a completely new, and we also have to grow up, and evolve and bring culture and style and, fashion and music and what I know really connect us.
100%. I agree, man. And I really like that sentiment of stop saying, this is so new or whatever. Like that's old now. Like just take
It's
it for
old now.
granted.
Come
Yeah.
on, it's old.
Well,
It's old.
when you take something for granted, that just means that it's like, well, just that you take it for granted. It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
duh, like duh,
yeah,
like
yeah. That's
NFTs,
it. Like,
crypto,
yeah.
duh. Like, but it
Well,
just
of
says that.
course,
What does that have to do with anything? We're talking about art right now or something, like,
exactly.
just
Like
yeah.
now the
So
focus is
yeah,
art.
Fake Whale is definitely trying to push forward that agenda. Like
Yeah, I
like
think
this is
so.
just commonplace now. Okay, like accept the new reality, move on. Like we're making cool shit. Like it doesn't change the need to just do cool shit and celebrate cool shit and make.
Totally. So one thing is that I wanted to ask you. This is another difficult question, but I know you can handle it. So not many people knows that even if with Skygolpe I'm doing a sort of figurative approach in a way, I consider myself a conceptual artist. So I never ask you because I know by chatting with you, uh, that the importance that you also give to conceptual art, and we had many chat about it. But do you consider yourself a conceptual artist?
That's so difficult to answer. You're right. Like you said, that was a difficult question. It is a difficult question because like you can break things down and break words down, right? And like I do that shit. But in a sense, all art is conceptual art, right?
Well, yes.
But what you mean by definition of conceptual art, and it's like, do I consider myself a conceptual artist? And it's like I see things in levels and layers, right? Like nothing's just one thing. There's layers to everything. And I would say at one layer I am, because any artist that considers their life to be art is a conceptual artist. You know,
yes, I agree.
So me in the action of me living and me considering that to be part of my art practice and it's my art, then I'm a conceptual artist for sure, you know? Yeah, to call everything that I make is just artifacts of my existence. And when I die, there'll be proof of my existence and I'll leave these behind. That's very conceptual. It's simple, it's very simple, but it's conceptual nonetheless. But individually, you can take art pieces, right? Like this, and be like, is this a conceptual piece of art? I mean, you would.
Well,
say
I
no.
suppose no, it's not true. I suppose it depends from your intention to it.
So does that? So okay, here I guess we come to the crux of it. What is your definition of conceptual art then?
Well, I can give my definition of conceptual art is mostly, so first of all, it comes to the idea that,
is it just up to the artist?
Well, I mean,
is it the intention of the artist?
There is a sort of academic definition, you know, of conceptual art, which is basically the art that gives more importance to the idea level rather than on the action level, you know. So I think that's the most standard way to put it. Like, but as far as I'm concerned, is also to give more importance, for example, to the process that lays behind the piece rather than to the end product, for example. You know,
okay.
this is another way I like to see it, you know, and the intention, meaning that, for example, if you have a you can do figurative things without having a figurative approach, you know.
Yeah.
Or maybe the way or maybe the way I use the silhouette, I don't use it as a thing to represent the man. I just use it as a sort of connection that I want to install to then open up a sort of evocation to an idea level, no? To imprint my philosophical to my philosophical intention, not the figurative intention. So that's what I more or less, you know.
So in some ways, I feel like by the academic definition, what I just showed you wouldn't be considered conceptual art. Like,
no, you're right.
My own consideration by the academic definition, because
you're right.
Yeah. By your definition, if you want to expand the definition into, because I've never heard this before, and I like this, where you're putting more emphasis on the process than the final piece, right? So like, okay, so there's conceptual art where if you put more emphasis on the thought behind the piece, but you're also now bringing it to if you put more emphasis on the process, which could be physical, material. If you put more emphasis on that, that's also conceptual to you.
Yeah, in my opinion, yes, because
then if you open it to intent, then as well, then a lot of my work you could say is conceptual, because a lot like
that,
you said.
That's why I asked you.
Well, about using the figure as a representation just to like project something into, you know, like, of course, like most of my blank images of figures that I do or whatever is about, you know, just that, like something that you can project into, and the intent behind it isn't to show a figure, it's to show an emotion or to show a feeling or to show something else. And so the idea behind it is more important and stuff. So like when you open up the definition, like you just did, you know, sure, a lot of my work is more conceptual, whereas maybe a lot of other artists are more just like, I create this image, which is true. Like a lot of artists do start out and being like, I want to make this, and here it is. You know, like I don't do that.
The reason why I ask you so is because you are one of the very few people that I can see that even what I'm seeing somehow is figurative, but the way I read it is conceptual. you know.
Wonderful.
And yeah, and that's it's super rare, not to mention super rare, but it's but that's really super rare, you know, for me. And
Thank you.
it's hard to understand this unless you, like for example, because for me it's more or less the same intent that I can perceive, and so that's why I ask you. So, and then for sure is you know, it can be part of a project. I mean, for example, Skygolpe is part of the many things that I'm doing. So maybe in the future people will also realize this more conceptual approach. But if someone asks you, of course I see your point, because if you see a Skygolpe painting, you can't say by definition that it's conceptual. You need to know what the artist thinks to understand that it's conceptual. So I totally get what you mean, but I thought it was cool to, you know, to dig a bit around that, because
I love this, and I think that there needs to be more conversation around process as concept, in a way of that can come across wrong and be taken wrong, and then artists can run off with that and like do kind of shitty stuff, if you know what I mean. But like, process is content. If your process was developed on your own, like you're not just following the process of what's traditional, like you learned how to oil paint, so now you oil paint a picture. But if you're inventing processes and ways of creation that are informed by your personal philosophies of life, of whatever, of practice, of I don't even know what, but informed by your personal life and your own concepts, well, then you can really load up process with meaning, you know, and I don't hear people talk about that very much, you know, but I say that because there's so much of my work where I've developed these processes that came out of like necessity, or came out of because I think a certain way. Yeah, that I created this a certain way.
exactly.
But in that, and so the process actually is showing you kind of how my thought works. And in that, it's so conceptual. And nobody really talks about that, about how like
Yeah,
process can be so loaded, so loaded.
because what I meant by it is that then it goes back to the intent. Because if you ask to an artist, like, what is the actual real piece, what is the real piece of art, is it the end product or is it the process? So now if the artist, if you mention the process, then can be considered as a conceptual approach, you know, because it goes back to what you were saying, and I totally relate to that art, I mean, art is life, no? I mean, if you are this kind of artist that doesn't draw a line of where art begins and life starts, and life ends, and vice versa, you already are in a conceptual level, you know, and then the intent define your art. So you really need to speak to the artist to understand that. But that's why it's conceptual. It's called conceptual art, because it comes from the mind. So in a way, it is subjective, and it goes to how you interpret your work. It's not necessarily your work. It's how you interpret it. That is super interesting to me. You know, I think that I feel to make art not when I finish, while I'm doing it.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then after that, it is not for me anymore. It's, you know, it's outside, and I don't care somehow, because what I was caring was to be in that state of mind that led me to. And it's not easy to be in the good state of mind to make art. It is a process.
It's my entire fucking life, man.
Yeah, it's not
trying
easy,
to capitalize
bro.
on the moments when you're like, fuck yeah, dude.
And things like meditation, you know, or auto-suggestion, whatever, like, or auto-influence, like, or influence, you know, sometimes when I know that I want to make sessions, I start to maybe influence myself from 2 days before, you know, even by, I don't know, reading a book, or, you know, watching something like that I know, and I want to go back, and I start to see, and then, so when I go to it, I'm ready, you know, to fulfill this. But it's not easy, like, and you know,
it's extremely
it's
hard.
different. It's different than sketching, or it's different than.
It definitely is. Like,
is another
for me,
thing.
it's like, for me, it's always like a muse. Like, I think of it as like something that comes to me that's not always with me. Like, I can't always do my best work. No artist ever has been able to just like do their best work on the drop of a dime. Like, there's great documentation from every artist, you know, like of, oh, I couldn't work today. You know, Francis Bacon talked about it a lot. He would go in the studio, and if it didn't work, you know, some days he just couldn't fucking paint at all, and he would just go get blitzed, go fucking do drugs and hang out with hookers or whatever the fuck he did. You know, like he was a pretty crazy dude. But I totally relate. Like sometimes the muse isn't with me. I know within 15 minutes of putting pen to paper, hand to whatever, I know right away.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh shit, my line fucked up. Oh, the energy is not right. It's never. There's nothing I can do that's gonna produce. I can't do. There's nothing. Just it's out of my hands completely. You know. But I have a goal, like a list of goals or whatever, and one of them, which is kind of like funny and just lofty or whatever, but it's if I could like really figure out a way to just live in that state of inspiration. That's what it is. It's like feeling inspired enough to work and to create good work and to stick with it and see that right. You have to have the right eyes for it or right up. But that's what inspiration gives you is eyes, right? Like if you can somehow manufacture that state of existing within a constant inspiration. It doesn't even have to be constant creation. It doesn't have to be, but just being inspired all the time and able to have like the receptors out and willing, right? On a good day, I go outside and go on a walk and I can take 100 photos and they're all fucking amazing. But then I can go on a walk the next day and not take a single fucking photo that makes any sense or any good.
Totally.
And it has I don't know what that is, but like, it's just, you see the world differently sometimes when you're inspired. And if I could somehow get to that point of just existing there, that's what I would kill for, you know?
Absolutely.
And I want to say one more thing that you said I thought was kind of funny, or you didn't even say it, but I thought of it while you were talking, is that like, by the definition of conceptual art and stuff, if you're making a beautiful image in the end, it's almost doing a disservice to yourself if you want it to be conceptual. Because if you make a beautiful image, people stop and they're like, a beautiful image, you meant to make a beautiful image. You must have meant to make a beautiful image.
The intent is very clear on where you wanted to, you know, like on where you wanted to point.
Yes, but herein lies a crux of my work, is that I've always wanted to make beautiful images still. I'm an aesthetic person. I'm a visual person.
Yeah,
beauty is important to me. Beauty is everything to me. So like along with having a loaded meaning and being conceptual, the end for me, it always had to look beautiful. And in that, sometimes I did myself a disservice, for sure. Where like the intent and my meaning will get lost in a pretty picture.
That's a very good one, and I would leave it like that.
Okay.
That's perfect, bro. So before we wrap it up, one question is, what is the biggest lesson that you learned from your life?
Holy shit! I don't know. I haven't.
You have 2 minutes. You have 2 minutes if you want.
Oh, fuck off. You can't escape yourself. It's probably like, and I mean, I'm just learning it.
Fine.
And I'm still learning.
I like it.
Do you want me to cut off there? Do you want me to explain?
No, that's perfect. And very last one. One song, one book, one movie.
Oh my God, fuck you. Oh my God, fuck you.
Love you, bro.
This is terrible. You just gave me like the You just gave me the worst question that anybody could give me. Okay, say it one more time. What are the three things?
So one song, one book, one movie.
I can't do some. I can do album. Is that okay? One album?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go just like ones that are very important to me. Tribe Called Quest, Beats, Rhymes, and Life is the album. Probably the most important album of my life that sticks with me to this day. Book, I'm gonna say The Beach, because it was written by Alex Garland. A lot of people don't know that book, which became a movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio, was written by Alex Garland, who went on to become a director who directed Ex Machina and wrote the screenplay for 28 Days Later. He's brilliant, but that book was huge to me when I was a young adult. The Beach by Alex Garland. In movie, oh fuck, it's not a favorite. I'm just gonna pull like one that was like influential. No shit, this is hard. I feel okay. The reason it's hard is because I feel like there's always expectations on what people would expect from me, because like I'm really good with recommendations, and I love all
No,
kinds of stuff.
go with the guts. Go with the
Okay.
whatever.
Igby Goes Down. Have you heard of that movie?
No, anything
Igby,
goes down.
Igby, Erigby Goes Down. Igby Goes Down. It stars Kieran Culkin, which is the one of the younger brothers of Macaulay Culkin from Home Alone, you know,
Ah,
Macaulay
okay.
Culkin. It's his younger brother, and like Amanda Peet is in it, and Bill Pullman and Jeff Goldblum, and the soundtrack is like the Dandy Warhols and stuff like that. It's and Badly Drawn Boy and stuff. It came out at an interesting time in my life, but I watched that movie over and over and over and over again. It's about like a rebellious teenager from a like very rich, affluent family in New York, and he like kind of just a troublemaker coming of age tale that I just because of the soundtrack, it's not like this classic of a movie, but at the time it came out, the way that it hit me, the way that I related to it, and then the soundtrack to it, I loved the Dandy Warhols at the time. It all just coalesced into like this this moment in time that really I related to. And I'm sorry that's so long-winded, but it's really funny. I was living with 3 roommates at the time when I was watching this movie, and I watched it so much, I would watch it over and over again, that one of my roommates started calling me Igby as a nickname. So it was a very meaningful movie to me for some reason.
Okay, bro. Thanks so much. I hope that.
Thank you, man.
I hope that people enjoyed this conversation as I have, because it was really a great time. So thanks so much for that. And I'm looking forward to your lives on FakeWhale. So far, they have been one better than the other. Shout out to all the guys as well, like Die with the most likes, Von Doyle and Robness. I really enjoyed every live. I really love the way you are interviewing people. Like I'm looking so forward to the rest. And actually, send me please the link of the movie later so I can watch.
I will. I'll send you the link of the movie, and also like I'm really excited about all the interviews, and they're going to continue to get better and better. I'm so excited to see where this goes, man. Like we're going to the top. It's going to be awesome.
Thanks to everyone for listening. Have a nice one. Thanks, bro.
Thank you, Sky.
Ciao.